How's it going, everybody? Welcome to Inside the Burrow. My name is Jacob Kelly, Zach Weinberger, JJ Metz joining with me as always. And today we are joined by Ryan Kantor. You can watch him on YouTube at Ryan Kantor, and he's also the writer for the Tiger's Nest. Ryan, how are you doing today?
Good. Hey, we don't all have nests. It's tigernet.com.
Tiger Nest, that name is just stuck in the head already. Tiger Net, excuse me. But we are very appreciative of you joining us on the podcast today. And as always, Zach, how are you doing?
Great. Now, this is going to be a really exciting weekend for football. And again, I'm excited to have Ryan on here.
Yeah, it hopefully will be a little more exciting than it was last week for us. And JJ, to round it out, how are you doing, sir?
Doing great. Just love doing these pods, and this is FAU's biggest game this season. So, nothing to lose. Just go in there and try to get the win.
Yeah, it is definitely the most exciting one. I'm sure whenever, us FAU fans saw the schedule, it was the one that pops off. Clemson won the national championship recently. And Ryan, again, very appreciative of you joining us today. So with that being said, I think the first way we should start this off is, as a blue blood, as a fan of a team that has won a national championship in recent years, when you hear the name FAU, and you can be as honest as you'd like, when you hear the name FAU, what first comes to mind?
Lane Kiffin. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, go ahead.
I've been to Boca. It's a great place. It's not Florida State. It's not Florida. It's not Miami, but Boca's a great place, and I know Lane Kiffin coached there, and I think that's what probably comes to mind for most people.
Ryan, obviously, when it comes to this game, I think Clemson opens as 26-point favorites, I believe, to FAU here. Is there anything from the past two games that you've seen from the Tigers, any weaknesses that you think that FAU should try to focus on if they want to have a chance of making this thing anything competitive?
I don't know if it's something that FAU can focus on, but Clemson's been insanely mistake-prone. It's been so frustrating. They've had 2 3-and-outs total through 2 games. They're moving the ball, and then you look at they lost to Duke. They scored 7, right? Because they get to the 1-yard line sometimes and they fumble. Cade threw a pick 6 against Charleston Southern, a 2-8 FCS team from a year ago. So if Clemson plays the way they can and plays even close to their talent level, it'll be non-competitive. But they make just ridiculous gaffes. So I think FAU, what I really respected about Charleston Southern, and they sort of got just outclassed in the second half, so the final score doesn't look close, but throughout the entire first half, it was close, and FAU's got more talent and more depth than Charleston Southern. What they did was they just went out there and had fun. They were doing onside kicks. They were just getting after it. And, I don't think we ever thought we were actually going to lose that game, but everyone was immediately like, oh my gosh, they just pick 6'd us? Like, what is happening? And they had a fumble. They got to the 1 and they ran it in. And it was like, we've given up 14 points in the first half already. Like, what's happening? So I think you just got to go in with reckless abandon, and it's kind of out of FAU's control. If FAU plays great, but Clemson plays great, they're not going to win. But if you got to play well enough to take advantage, if Clemson mucks it up.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of things have to go right for FAU to win this game. Clemson does have to, not play their best game. But obviously, you guys had the QB change from DJU to Cade Klubnik. What are your thoughts on Cade's performances against Duke and Charleston Southern? What would you like him to improve on in this FAU game?
Question. Yeah, so he's got to just be a little bit more poised and avoid mistakes. He had the pick 6. He also had a play where he was being brought down and he sort of carelessly, in a panic, just threw the ball in the air. It landed sort of in the middle of nowhere. It was an intentional grounding, which isn't the end of the world, but that easily could be another pick 6, right? You got to value the ball. So he's accurate when guys are open, and I think there's issues with the wide receiver core. The guys aren't open enough, but when guys are open, he has time, he hits them. But what does he do when guys aren't open or he's hurried? So that's what I want to see him have, that poise.
So you guys came into the season with championship level aspirations. I believe your preseason ranking was 8 or somewhere in that range, and then
9, yeah.
9. Then that loss of Duke happened. Immediately following that game, what is the vibe around the team going from you feel like it's a championship or bust type level season to you fall to Duke week 1?
I can't give you the vibe of the team, but I can give you sort of the general Clemson vibe, and it's not good. Um, you know, we had hoped and talked about a lot. We've had 2 years of the offense being, we say best is the standard, so we've had 2 years of that standard not being met. And there was a lot of talk. Well, DJ Uyunglele, it's him, right? And briefly last year when Cade came in against UNC in the ACC championship game, the offense was incredible. So you thought, okay, it was DJ. But then Orange Bowl and now Duke, you realize it wasn't just DJ. You thought maybe it was Brandon Streeter, the OC, who was dismissed, and they hired Garrett Riley, possibly the best OC in the country. Well, they still lost to Duke with him. So you got a new quarterback, new OC. The offense still isn't all the way there. So I think there's deeper issues with all the position coaches, with not using the transfer portal. A lot of people have talked about how Clemson's talent level wasn't that much better than Duke's. They're going to be younger than a lot of teams they face because they don't use the portal. So they're not bringing in veteran guys. They're using, I think you'll see TJ Parker is probably one of the 2 best defensive ends on the team. He's a true freshman. So I think it's a little bit a reset. I think this is probably more of an 8-4 team. I think if they can go 10 or 11 and call it 11-2, people will be happy that was met. Let's just improve upon last year's 11-3 at this point.
Ryan, what is it that you know about this FAU team that maybe can surprise you? Is it the depth at D-line? Is it the 3-headed monster they have at running back, Casey Thompson? What is it about this FAU team that could possibly provide some trouble for the Tigers?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know as much about FAU, obviously, as you all do. I know more about, you're moving to a new conference and you've got a new coach and a new quarterback, right? So you've got a lot of change, which makes you guys sort of an interesting team and program by default. I guess I'd flip that around to you, and I'll tell you some of the areas where I want to see Clemson do well, and you can tell me kind of what opportunity Clemson has to kind of gauge those. I think the first one is the wide receiver core. They're not breaking open. I want to see just a guy running with like 6 yards of separation downfield and just hit him, right? It's just a great play call, and our receiver's better than your cornerback. Just go get it. And I'm not seeing that yet. So that's one thing I'm looking for.
Yeah, for sure. And as you mentioned before, I'm pretty sure you guys have had 3 new offensive coordinators in the last 3 years. The play calling this year has seemed to be pass heavy. In Cade's first 2 games, he combined for 72 pass attempts. Do you expect offensive coordinator Garrett Riley to call a lot of passing plays against FAU, or do you think Will Shipley will get the workhorse and there will be a lot of rushing yards?
Yeah, I think they'll lean on the run, especially if they take a commanding lead. They've got 2 great running backs in Will Shipley, who you mentioned, and then Phil Maffa, who actually led all offensive players in PFF grade last year. So the 2 best playmakers are the running backs, and they've been using them in 2-back sets lately, which I'm a big fan of. I think most Clemson fans like and appreciate that. So they're not going to be shy about passing it. I think what they have seemed to be shy about is attacking deep vertical passing routes. So that's what I think we want to see more of.
You just mentioned how FAU just entered into a new conference, and right now there's such volatility around the college football landscape, and SMU is a team that might be joining the ACC. But being in a Power 5 conference, how does it affect your season outlook and your long-term outlook when you really don't know going forward as clear as in previous years who you're going to be playing against?
Tell me more what you mean about that, who you're going to be playing against.
So like the schedules usually get drawn out a little bit years ahead of time. However, with like the Pac-12 breaking down, and you might be grabbing a team from the Pac-12, you might be grabbing a team from the AAC, like with an SMU, and there's just a rotating door around the country, and with the uncertainty around that from a blue blood perspective, how does that fit in, and how does that affect the outlook of the team?
Yeah, so I don't think it matters for this season. No one's joining this season, but you got Stanford, Cal, and SMU joining next season. last Saturday, Auburn played a 10:30 Eastern time game, right? So I'm in Atlanta, and a lot of my coworkers and friends are Auburn grads, so they had to like take naps and then try to stay up till 2 in the morning to watch, right? That is ridiculous, and that's what Clemson's looking at with Stanford and Cal joining, and then they're probably not going to be marquee opponents or particularly interesting games. So I would be lying if I said I was excited about the additions. I'm fine with SMU, but to get the, I guess it would be the 9th and 10th choice teams out of the Pac-12 seems just like really poor leadership to not have the foresight. Like if you were willing to add teams out west, why didn't you add the 4 teams that went to the Big 12 that were more desirable? I was planning to go to Boston next year for the road game there. I don't know if we're playing there now. So I don't, it's early enough. I'm sure they'll have to come out with new schedules for next season pretty soon. So I don't think it'll mess up fans trying to travel. But I think, at least for me, and I think the sentiment with a lot of fans is we're adding teams on the West Coast to get an extra like $6 million per team. And they're bad at football. And in some cases, they're bad at a lot of sports. So if there was all that nostalgia of like Clemson used to play the North Carolina schools in Maryland and Virginia and Georgia Tech, and that there was some rivalries there. Now we've spread this conference so much. Forget it. Let's just join a better conference and make more money at this point. That was kind of the last straw of any sort of nostalgia of let's hold this thing together. It's gone now. Let's get out.
Ryan, I think one of the things of going into this game, besides facing a team like Clemson, which talent-wise should obviously outmatch FAU in every facet, but you have Tom Herman, you have Casey Thompson, a lot of big game experience there, especially when you're going to go into Death Valley. The crowd atmosphere is going to be next level. Do you think that Herman, Thompson, and some of the coaching staff having that big game experience will prove to me maybe beneficial going into Saturday? Or do you feel like maybe that's not going to be that much of a variable?
I kind of think that's overrated, to be honest. It's not a big game unless FAU gets a couple scores early and all of a sudden starts believing, and then it kind of becomes its own monster, right? Like if this goes according to script and they're down 3 touchdowns at halftime, it's not a big game anymore, right? And the crowd's pretty quiet. People are headed out because it's an 8 o'clock kick for this game, which is outrageous. But people aren't staying past 10 if it's a 4 touchdown game, right? So I don't think big game experience matters in a regular season game quite like this. I think it's a little bit of an overrated metric, kind of like clutch is in baseball. Unless you're Dark Jeter, who's awesome.
Oh, we'd love to hear that.
Right. Yeah, Ryan. And this question that I have doesn't really matter with FAU, but just a general question about Clemson. Last year, like you mentioned, everyone was blaming it on DJU and the offensive coordinator, and now that both of those are new positions filled, what do you think has went wrong these last 2 years for Clemson and in these first 2 games? Is it Dabo not adapting to the transfer portal, or is there something that we should know?
I think that's part of it. I for both of since 2021 when these issues started really, really manifesting, I've said the biggest issue is the wide receivers. I maintain that that's still the case. I think the transfer portal is a big issue because as you see other schools have a hole and then plug it with a veteran guy, Clemson, like at defensive end this year, is plugging with a true freshman. I also think that Dabo, for all the great things he's done, and he's for his career, a top 5 coach for sure, in terms of accomplishments. He hasn't adapted. And I think his style of roster management is very family oriented and not very cutthroat. And it's gotten to the point where you look at Clemson's recruiting rankings and they seem good, but then you also have to factor in the other schools are adding not just talent, but experienced talent that's proven to come in and help. And you realize the recruiting rankings are kind of overselling Clemson's talent level a little bit. The other thing he does is Clemson might have a guy who's underperforming, let's say, and they'll keep him on scholarship for not just the 4 years, not just 5 years, but sometimes 6 with this COVID waiver. They're not telling you, it's been 4 years, you're not very good, it's time to move on. They truly treat you like family, which I think is on the one hand really great. And And on the other hand, you're seeing, opportunities to add talent being passed up.
So we've talked about both teams here, and it's no one has to lie about it. Clemson is definitely expected to easily handle FAU, but let's say FAU gets a couple early scores. What would be considered a disappointment? Like, what's that line of, whether it be 20 points, 14 points, 28 points? If the game plays out and FAU is within what margin by the time the game is over, would that be considered a disappointment?
So I can give you a number, but I'll tell you, last year we played Georgia Tech. I think it was maybe 41-10 or 17 or something like that. It was maybe 17, but the final score, whatever it was a blowout. But if you watch the game, it was still dicey into the second half, and it didn't look good. So it's a little bit more qualitative than, we need to cover the spread. And yes, we need to cover the spread. If this is a 3-touchdown game, people probably aren't going to feel too good about it. Clemson fans aren't going to feel too good about it. But I think it also needs to be a game where Clemson is sharp early. They're not making dumb fumbles and picks. The offensive line isn't having busts. Receivers are actually open. And by the second half, you actually have backups in. I'd rather win by 28 with backups playing a large chunk of the second half than win by 35. But we didn't get to pull our starting quarterback until fourth quarter, right? So there's a lot of game script kind of stuff that plays into that.
Ryan, I'm always very interested in hearing kind of an outside perspective about FAU. We always hear about, again, from the insider sort of thing, you think as FAU as a college sort of on the rise here. But I guess from a person on the outside, I know you mentioned Lane Kiffin as being kind of the first thing you think about. But when you see maybe like the basketball team kind of achieving going to the Final Four, and then obviously we'll see about the new conference and what football is going to do you feel like FAU has the possibility to be on the same level as some of these other South Florida schools, or do you think it'll take even longer to kind of maybe achieve that status, just from an outsider perspective?
I think the conference realignment has a lot to say. Obviously, in basketball, you're there, right? Now we'll see how long you can maintain that with less resources, but it's nothing I could possibly. You've accomplished more than Clemson's ever accomplished in a single basketball season. So you've accomplished it there. Now it's just maintaining. Football, I think it's an enterprise, right? You're not grabbing 6 guys to primarily play, right? So you've got to have a lot more infrastructure, requires a lot more money. And if you're making now better American Conference money versus Big Ten money, it's just very hard to compete. You're going to be making a lot less money than UCF. UCF, Miami, Florida State, and especially Florida. So can you realistically expect to compete against them on a year in, year out basis? I don't think so. Can you have a special year here and there? Possibly.
And so I guess just one final question before we wrap things up with you. And again, Ryan, we're really appreciative of you joining us today. Kind of piggybacking on what Zach just asked you. You guys have had that championship level experience. You guys have won a national championship. You've had years with great quarterback play. You've had great Taj Boyd. You've had Deshaun Watson. You've had Trevor Lawrence. Getting to experience that as a fan and FAU getting a little bit of a taste of that with the Final Four run last year, what is it like to be in it and to be there at the finish line with 1 or 2 games left to go, and then you're going into the championship game? What, I guess, reminisce a little bit back to those times, and obviously times you hope to achieve again. Just what was that feeling like being in that environment?
So I'll give you a little kind of like retrospective on how it felt in 2015 and 2016. So of course, remember the 2016 final play, Watson to Renfro wins the national championship. Year before, Clemson lost to Alabama, and it was incredibly heartbreaking. It felt like a team of destiny. It was out of nowhere. The 2015 season, even though we lost, was probably the most fun I've ever had following any team any season. 2016 was really stressful. It was way less fun. And it was, you had so many guys come back and you had to win that year. I likened it to the Jazz when they lost to the Bulls, and then that was it, right? Like the Michael Jordan Bulls, of course. And so I was just so scared we'd miss our opportunity. And they were losing to Alabama early, and my friend paid $2,000 off StubHub for a ticket. And we were losing, and he's like, "What have I done with my life?" They obviously stormed back. Final drive, They score. We're going crazy. I turned. My wife is sitting, or she wasn't my wife at the time. My girlfriend at the time, now wife, was next to me. We're standing. I turned. I just put my head on her shoulder and said, "We did it." And I'm tearing up almost. And I look out, and I'm not exaggerating. Thousands and thousands of grown men are crying on their wives' shoulders as far as the eye can see. It was just, you had to be there to like understand it, but everyone was doing that same kind of moment. It was insane. And 2018 was just pure celebration, like almost the entire second half. It was more fun in a way, but the like cathartic emotion was different. Yeah, I mean, those are like, you know, some of the best memories I'll ever have.
I know FAU fans this year with the basketball team are probably going to be sharing some similar emotions as that 2016 year, where last year, never in a million years expect to get to the Final Four. We're there, and that emotional collapse. And I mean, Zach, you and I were there in Houston. We got to see that firsthand. That initial emotion of like, well, crap, this might never ever happen again. So I feel like as a basketball program, I hope we're in a position where we go through all like that 2016 season where we're just continuing to be stressed out, because it is, you know, we are at that point where we were last year and building on from it. Doesn't look like we're quite getting that from the football team this year. But
well, hey, let me add one thing to that. You can't like put the toothpaste back in the tube, right? So now you've got a Final Four. So Sweet 16 is never going to feel like it did that first time. I remember in 2011 we won the ACC, and it was unbelievable. It was like the feeling there was almost comparable to the national championships, and definitely to the semifinal playoff wins. I remember a guy a couple rows in front of us stood up and turned around and started like screaming to the Clemson fans. He was a Clemson fan. A Dabo speech that he had said to the media was something along the lines of, "We're not LSU and we're not Alabama, but we're not South Carolina," and everyone's just going crazy. It was really special. So enjoy every step along the way, because the first time you go to the Final Four is better than the next time. And so enjoy every step. Even if you win a national championship, obviously that's unbelievable, but enjoy the steps along the path.
We're certainly going to try to, and hope it's a season that produces very similar fruits to last season. Again, like I was saying, the football season doesn't look like it's going to quite match up to that, but we definitely have a very exciting proposition on Saturday, and a game that we're very much looking forward to. And Ryan, it's really been great having you come on the podcast today. Again, you can find Ryan on YouTube at Ryan Kantor, also writer for Tiger Net, not Tiger's Nest. Got it right this time. But Ryan, really appreciate you coming on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks, man. And just another thank you to Ryan. Please make sure to go check out his content if you're interested in some Clemson content. But now back to the three of us. And, you know, with all that we just talked about, I think just the most realistic conversational starter is, let's be honest, as fans. And I know, and you guys have watched the first few episodes, and this guy is less realistic, this guy's more realistic. So we're going to go to more realistic first. Zach, it's a tall task. Going into Clemson, try to come away with the victory. What is your realistic expectations for Saturday?
We're gonna get blown out. I know maybe that's not what people want to hear. The thing is, right? Like, my realistic expectation is this, and I said this when we were facing Purdue last season. Like, I just want FAU to be competitive. That's what I wanted. Now, again, they had the chance to win that game at the end, if you remember last season. Now, going into Clemson, going into Death Valley, this crowd atmosphere, I know Ryan said that, you know, his opinion that he doesn't believe that that's a kind of a beneficial thing, which, I mean, all respect to that. I do think that Herman and Casey Thompson going in with that big game experience could help not just the performance of the team, but could help the team around them just to kind of calm them down. Because for a lot of these players, I mean, they haven't played in a big game like this. I mean, for a guy like a Jackson Ambush, right, who's been so good for the Owls this season. But, you know, again, he's played at Albany and FAU, you know. So, again, just kind of players like that, or players on the offensive line, the skilled position players, I think that could help. But, you know, so I'm hoping that they could be competitive throughout that first half, you know. But, again, looking at the performance they had against Ohio, right, like a very dreadful performance on offense. Again, and I've always believed that this team will be a work in progress until you get to the conference schedule. That's when the games really matter. And even when I asked Herman about that, he believes that sentiment as well, that they are a work in progress. So my realistic expectation is this. I think that they are going to lose big in this game. But Herman said this to me Monday, and Ryan kind of said the same thing. Reckless abandonment. These are the funnest games of the year because you can go in and just do whatever. There's not pressure to win this game because you're down big. You're going to be down big, or you're predicted to be down big. So just go out there, throw whatever you have at Clemson. The effort's going to be there for sure. Let's just see what happens. It's college football. Anything can happen. So realistic expectation is that they lose big. My hope is that they're competitive. That's what I am. So I'm interested to see what JJ has to say on the other side of the aisle.
Yeah, we know what we're getting from JJ.
But again, but I'm cool with the confidence, and I'm cool with the positive attitude about this team because once again, if they get blown out, my feeling about this team doesn't change, and about the university is that this university is on the rise. So a game like this puts them on the map. That's great. So that's what I think.
I think that's a very level-headed and reasonable take. So with that, let's go to JJ. JJ, please tell us: is there any reason why you think we're going to win by 50 points?
To be realistic with you, I think we're going to win this game. I think that this FAU team has the ability to win this game. And I'll be upfront and honest with you guys. Clemson is going to be looking ahead to Florida State. Clemson is playing a top 3 team in the country next week. Not this week, but next week. They're just going to be thinking of Florida State. And FAU, this is their Super Bowl. This is their biggest game of the season. This is their arguably biggest game in the last, I don't know too much, maybe 3 years. So this is FAU Super Bowl. We're going to go in here with nothing to lose. We just lost to Ohio. And Clemson looks terrible. I'll be honest with you. Clemson does not look good. They were beating a 2-8 FCS school last week at halftime by 7 points. FAU is going to win this game. Casey Thompson, it's his Super Bowl. He's used to these environments. He was at Texas playing a Power 5 teams in the Big 12. He was at Nebraska playing top Big 10 teams, like on the road at Michigan and Ohio State. Clemson isn't going to be a problem for him. 8 p.m. Death Valley. Just going to so excited for this, and we're going to pull off the upset. 100%.
I don't know if that's JJ Metz or Deion Sanders down there, but I feel like I can run through a wall right now. You know?
It got me hyped up.
Hey,
hyped up.
I wish JJ could be out in front of the players on Saturday. Are they already over there? Has the plane left off yet? If they haven't, please get JJ onto that plane so they can have him in first class. Be like, hey guys, come on, we got this. Because you did raise some fair points. There is a thing about teams looking ahead to their schedule. And we've seen teams like Appalachian State last year, what they did to Texas A&M, very, very nearly did the same thing to North Carolina this year. So every single year, it seems like just at least one of those lower schools in Appalachian State, at least used to be FCS. I'm not quite sure off the top of my head if they still are FCS. But one of those lower schools, in FAU and the AAC isn't quite lower. We're definitely in that mid-range just before the Power 5 schools. So there is a possibility that, JJ, you have a very fair point there, that Florida State on the horizon for Clemson is a bigger worry even today than it is than for their game against FAU. I like to think I'm somewhere in between these two, and unfortunately I do lean the way more towards Zach. I had a lot more confidence. I had a lot more confidence going into this game following the Monmouth game. Shocker. I had more confidence after watching a win versus watching a loss. But the way we lost last week, also losing some key players, losing obviously Jaquan Burton on the first or second offensive snap, Armani Eli Adams with the leg injury that he sustained, and also who is it on the defensive line that got ejected and is going to miss the first half of the game?
Victorious Hawthorne.
Hawthorne, yes. So there's definitely some massive players that FAU is going to be without this game. So it is a massive mountain to climb. And watching the way we lost last week, the offense couldn't really move the ball. The defense held strong, which is the one strong suit. If the defense could come out and replicate their performance last week, I feel pretty solid. But Zach, when you're watching that Ohio game last week, how much did that really lower your expectations for this game this week against Clemson compared to maybe where you would have been after the Monmouth game, after watching Clemson lose to Duke? Excuse me.
My expectation was already low, but yeah, it got lower because of their performance for sure. And to me, the one thing what I wanted to see is that, sure, again, I had question marks for the defense going into the season. and they really kept they kept giving FAU opportunities to score on offense against Ohio, which is one of the more frustrating parts about the game, and really reminded me about the past couple seasons under Taggart, where you just kind of saw the defense give the offense so much opportunities, and they just couldn't capitalize. But again, to me, I still have faith in Casey Thompson and the rest of this offense kind of having a good season. So maybe JJ just made a face, so I don't know if he agrees or not, but I still have faith in them. Now, are they going to do that against Clemson? That's sort of kind of left the jury still out there. But again, Clemson is just way more talented than FAU. I think that's fair to say. JJ doesn't think so. So listen, I'm excited to hear what JJ has to say about why FAU is much more talented than Clemson. But because that's just the state of college football. But again, to me, Tom Herman and these guys on his team, they're bought into what Herman's bringing to the school, to the school, to the athletic programs and stuff like that. So for me, I think that this should be, and hopefully a competitive game in the first half. But listen, the expectations got a little lower. But like I said, it's a work in progress.
JJ, what kind of script can you foresee if FAU is going to come ahead? Just plot out the game for me as you can from start to finish. If FAU is going to win, how is that game going to go?
That if FAU wants to win this game, I think they have to be either down 3 at like the worst at halftime. I think that we got to score first, whether it's a field goal or a touchdown, or if we don't score first, we have to score on the possession after Clemson scores. But honestly, if we're down by more than 3 at halftime, it's going to be really hard because FAU is more talented than Charleston Southern, but Charleston Southern was within 7 of Clemson at halftime, and then Clemson won, I think, 66-24 or 66-17, something like that. But FAU is going to win this game. FAU is going to end up winning this game. Clemson doesn't look like a top 25 team at all. Like, at all. And I'm not saying it is, but it might be time, if we lose this game, for Daniel Richardson to get the start if we are to lose this game. That's how high I am on this FAU team. And I think that FAU, my score prediction in total is FAU to win 35-31.
Real quick, Jacob, before we move on. First of all, let me just say that I hope this happens. Okay, I don't want to come on here and be like, right, like, obviously FAU's going to lose, and I hope they lose because my prediction to be right. Obviously not. Now, I do think that saying that if Casey has a bad game, that they should move forward with Daniel Richardson, just to kind of clarify, to me, that's ridiculous, right? But what I will say is this. I do think that they didn't get Casey Thompson here for just to kind of have for a couple games and then kind of sit him on the bench. But what I will say is this, and Ryan kind of brought up a really great point about the receivers, especially now Jaquan. We don't know about his status, concussion protocol. We'll see if he makes it. Armani Eli Adams was in the same boat last week. He made the game. Armani's going to miss the game, though, so that's another blow to the defensive backs and just the defense as a whole. But what receivers are going to pop off? Besides Wester, is B.J. Alexander, Devin Price, Tony Johnson, are they going to step up? Same thing when it comes to the offensive line. I believe Casey Thompson was sacked 2 or 3 times. Now, when you're facing the Clemson defensive line, how is the line of scrimmage going to be dictated? To me, that's kind of one of the more worrying things because Casey might not even have time to throw the ball. And for the receivers to get separation, they're going to need some time. So I think Herman and Charlie Fry, they have to write up a really creative and awesome game plan here if they want to stay competitive. Now, once again, 35-31 final score. That sounds like a really awesome game to happen. And again, I really want to see a lot of work done to this team. But again, just we'll see. So I like everything that JJ said, and I hope it happens. moving on from Casey after this game, if he doesn't do well, I think is just a little bit too much of the gun. Like, for example, it's like Nkosi, when he first started for the Owls, I think the first game was against Florida, struggled that game. I don't think you just sit him after that, you know? So, but again, obviously, that's JJ's opinion, so he's obviously, you know, he has the right to it. But again, you know, I want to hear from fans though. You know, I don't want to be the Debbie Downer. You know, I want to hear from fans. If you truly think they're going to win this game, I want to hear it. You know, I would love to hear it.
Yeah, and
Easy cakewalk.
if
You
you
said
if
it was a
you
cakewalk. To me, so JJ, I mean, the way you're smiling when you say that, I want to know. I mean, if you're being serious about it, that's great.
Well, my honest opinion is what I just said. I mean, Clemson will be looking ahead. It's just impulsive. The players are going to be like, you know, let's beat a top 3 team in Florida State. And this is FAU Super Bowl, like I mentioned. And I expect that Cade Klubnik will struggle. He will. He's a rookie quarterback, I guess, fresh sophomore, I think. And he's a new quarterback, and that Clemson team looked horrendous, as I mentioned, horrendous in those first 2 weeks. And I mean, you could say FAU looked horrendous against Ohio. I mean, Ohio was the better team; they deserved to win, but that's not going to happen this Saturday. FAU to pull off the upset, and I'm being serious. They're going to pull it off. Like, they're going to. Like there's no doubt in my mind.
I wish.
Go ahead,
Zach.
Can I ask you a question? Can I ask you a question? And also, JJ could definitely add on to it as well. Do you believe, though, like, for example, if Clemson was coming here to FAU Stadium, right, it's maybe a different scenario, but more so the crowd. You're going into Death Valley, a huge college football atmosphere. Do you think that might rattle FAU? I do want to ask you that, and JJ can answer that.
I actually kind of like it as a road game because FAU then goes into there with no expectation, and you look at. I imagine Clemson fans are going to look at FAU sort of like how FAU fans looked at Monmouth. Like I imagine the game later this year where we have Tulane come in, the fans are going to be a little more pumped up, more fans show up. I could see a very similar thing with Clemson where FAU's there, the fans aren't completely in it. Maybe it's, maybe not even a sellout, maybe a little less fans show up, a little less students in particular show up because, it's an expectation game. It's a game where you expect Clemson to go out there and just take care of business rather than you're walking in there hoping to be wildly entertained by, like, let's say like a game like, the Dolphins and Chargers was on Sunday. That's not something that Clemson fans are hoping for or expecting. So when you're going on the road, I think that actually helps in a situation like this where, yeah, you're not going to have any fans there, but the Clemson fans, if things start going wrong, can very quickly start to turn against their own team.
Do you want to add this? Casey Thompson did say, quote, that he prefers road games and he likes to play in the biggest atmospheres. Obviously, he has experience. I mean, he's played Ohio State and Michigan on the road, and in that Michigan game, they kept it within three or something 2 years ago. But I think that I just think that it's better to be on the road because, like Jacob said, there's not going to be a lot of Clemson fans coming out to the game because they just expect to win. But also, Casey Thompson said that he prefers road games. Now, do you have a better chance to win? Does FAU have a better chance to win if they're at home? 100%. But I don't think it's going to matter that much. I mean, maybe a little bit. But FAU is going to win this game.
It is a good conversation to have in theory, but we'll have to wait till Saturday to watch it unfold. And when Saturday comes to be, it should be hopefully a fun game in which we've already seen JJ really expect it to be a fun game. 35-31 would be a beautiful game, especially if it goes the way of FAU. Zach, you've been the adverse of that through this episode. You might not be a fan favorite right now of people that have watched. I think the fans are definitely leaning towards JJ, even if they know deep back in the back of their mind that you're probably right. So, with what we heard from JJ, give us your official score prediction.
So, listen, they're going to lose this game. Okay.
How?
But
dare you.
Continue. Listen. I'll give you the score prediction as well. Again, I think the ideal situation is that they're very competitive with them at halftime. Kind of like what JJ said. I hope that they're at least down 3 and maybe they have the ball going into the second half. I think that could be an ideal situation where you're causing a lot of excitement for this team on the road. So yeah, but at the end of the day, I'm gonna go ahead and just one more thing. I know Charlie Fry told me, and in case he said the same thing, that they're because of the crowd atmosphere, they're gonna work in some silent counts because they're usually on a clap cadence. So they're gonna work in some silent counts. I'm hoping it's not too sloppy once they get out onto the field there. So it's gonna be interesting to see that. The final score, I'm gonna say that they're gonna score. Clemson's gonna score 47. Okay, 47 points. Just seeing JJ's reaction just made me laugh. 47 points, and FAU is going to score 17. And I think a lot of that might come at garbage time. But we'll see. Once again, I am hoping to be proven wrong. But I'm going to go ahead and say that's the official prediction.
That is a vast difference between JJ. And so with that, I decided before the show started, and you guys can attest to this, that I am not going to sit here and say that FAU is going to lose. So, with that being said, I have concocted in my mind how FAU is going to win, and that is what's going to happen. I think it's going to be a disgusting game. I think it's going to be a game that neither team watching on tape is excited about. But I think that results in an advantage for FAU because of the thing I previously said. If Clemson gets off to a slow start, let's say they go 3-0 on the first drive. Let's say they don't score touchdowns till the second quarter. What are the fans thinking? The fans are on their phones texting the group chats. What's happening? Why? They're not standing up chanting. They're not singing the fight song. They're like, huh? Okay? Excuse me? So, with that, I think that just ugly momentum of it's like a 6-3 game at the end of the first quarter. At halftime, it's 13-10. It's that grind out match that I would like to see and think FAU will result with a victory. I'm gonna go for 17-13.
That is a sloppy, ugly game. Lock it in.
Lock it in. Hit the under. All right. Hit the under. Take the points with FAU. Take FAU money line. All right. Put $10 on the FAU money line. Just for the fun of it. I'm not even sure what that would pay out. But
we don't promote gambling on the show, by the way. But,
yeah. So yeah. It's not legal in the state of Florida. So our FAU fans out of the state, I'm not sure if it's legal for Clemson fans, but hypothetically, if you were to bet, take the under. Hypothetically, of course. Hypothetically. Don't encourage gambling here on the show. Hypothetically. JJ, no gambling. You're a long ways away from being able to do that. But yeah, an ugly game. I think that's the best chance that FAU has to come away with a victory. Just grinding it out, being a pest, getting a few turnovers, converting in the red zone. Now, I think that is the biggest key. Is if you're able to get to the red zone, because I think FAU is going to struggle to move the ball. We saw what happened last week. FAU just could not move the ball at all. That we had that touchdown on the pick six. And that was the brightest spark of the game. With that last drive, we finally started to move the ball with some sort of efficiency because we had to. If we get to the red zone, we get within the 25-yard line, you have to put up touchdowns. Field goals are nice. You got to get points on the board one way or another. But if you get to the red zone, you got to score touchdowns. Gentlemen, it's been a little bit of a longer podcast, I'm sure. Sorry, Rick. If you guys have any final thoughts before we go, we're gonna go to Zach first because we know what we're gonna hear from him, and then we're gonna give JJ one final opportunity to hype up the crowd. Zach, if you have to leave us with any final thoughts, go on ahead.
Let me just say this, and I said this about the Purdue game last year. If this team loses, let's say, by 3 points, let's say like Clemson wins by 3, how are the fans going to react? Are they going to be disappointed? To me, if FAU loses by 3 points to Clemson in Death Valley, I know there's no... Listen, I know I always say this. There's no moral victories in sports in general. You got to feel good, okay, about that. Especially about your chances really going into Illinois the next week. Now we're talking about a game here. We'll see how they play against Clemson. All I'm saying is, let's just be open-minded. Don't be so reactionary. That's every fan base ever. Whether it's sports or comic books or whatever. don't be too overreactionary. But again, whatever the case may be, it's going to be a fun game Saturday. It's a huge presentation, huge stage for FAU. I always love it when FAU goes on a big platform like this, huge stage. So, should be fun.
All right, enough out of the guy that said we're going to lose by 27. JJ, come on. Come on. Get us excited.
This might be the best thing that's happened all week. Jacob's lights didn't go out. They're still on. Last week, when we predicted all three of us, Jacob said, quote,
we love a good callback. Let's go.
Let's go off. That's the best thing. Now we're going to win. But being on a realistic note, we're going to win this game. This is our biggest game, as I mentioned. I expect with the Jaquan Burton injury, some thoughts that I have. LeJounte is going to get a big workhorse on the receiving side of things, and PJ Alexander is going to be great. And I want to see Larry get more of the production than last week. It seemed that we started Zuberi Mobley. He started on the field, but let's get Larry more production, and let's win this game. Go Owls.
Very quick. That's such a great point as well, by the way. Like, this team relies so much on the passing game. I think they ran the ball like 11 times, right? I mean, can't happen. I agree with that. Run the ball. I agree.
Thank you for ending us with something positive, Zach. We appreciate it. And we do appreciate you guys tuning in today. This has been a very long episode. I have no idea how long it's going to end up being. But if you've stuck through to the end, we really appreciate it. If you have done so, please hit that like button down below. Get your score predictions down below. I don't want to hear 44-17, all right? But if you do think that, let us know down below and let us know why. If you think we're going to win, please let us know why. Also, hit that subscribe button, and also go check out FAUOwlsNest.com for some more written content that you can check out if you need more FAU content. But that is it from us today. Jacob Kelly, Zach Weinberger, JJ Metz joining you guys. As always, we appreciate you all very much for watching. We hope all you guys have a great rest of your day. Enjoy the game on Saturday. Take care, everybody.